Fantastic. So we are live. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another construction technology webinar. So for today, we're extremely excited to have the Join team as well as a few others, which we'll get to our fantastic speakers in just a moment, to talk about pre-construction and better collaboration in design and pre-construction. So we're going to focus on healthcare and get into some really interesting topics. You do not want to miss what this group has to say. So really rare to get this kind of lineup here. So I'll kick it off and kind of ask our group to share a little bit about themselves. So let's start first with Jason with Join. So Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to what you're doing today and what makes you passionate.
Yeah, thanks again for the time. Yeah, Jason Rutter, Head of Industry Strategy here at Join. I've spent about 30 years in the construction industry, half on the owner side, half on the general contractor side. And really during that period, most of it was very complicated builds, primarily in the pharmaceutical arena, where you had multiple stakeholders and whatnot, and really fell in love with design build and TBD, where really collaboration was really the main tenet to really pull us through for better project outcomes. Mm-hmm. I was part of the award-winning Genentech project in South San Francisco, where we built a single-use facility and really led the big room and the TBD efforts there. And a lot of what we were struggling with, in addition to new behaviors and just the complexity of the build, was also often just the tools that we had. And so. Mm-hmm. What I saw was an opportunity to come to Join after I saw the amazing tools and how it supports TBD and really fosters better collaboration. So that's what I've been doing the past year and a half, kind of getting the good word out there. And I've had the luxury to really work with a lot of the guests here over the past 10, 15 years. And so I'd love to hear more about their experiences in building collaboration.
Great. And I do see some guests kind of joining in. Thank you for tuning in. We're doing some brief intros with our speakers here. Fantastic lineup. So stay tuned for a really good discussion. So let's move on now to Michael Blassingen with Layton. Let us know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Michael Blassingen with Layton. Glad to join. I'm a director of pre-construction for our nationwide healthcare business unit. I really put all my focus in design build and IPD projects. So just wherever they're located, around the country. I spent the first 15 years of my career on the operations side, working my way up through the ranks, and then realized, sort of my strength was getting out front of projects. So I shifted over to pre-construction and business development, really just trying to get ahead and set our projects up to succeed.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think a lot of us start on that ops side and realize, hey, we have this cool strength that we can contribute in a different way. So fantastic. Let's next go to Michael Barden with MBBJ. Hopefully I'm getting that right. Michael, share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Aaron. Thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm looking forward to it. I am a registered architect in California. Been in the industry for about 25 years, and I've had the privilege really to sit on both sides of the table of in the building and design process, both as a designer, a technical architect, and then also as a design manager with a general contractor. My experience spans over a large number of project types and market sectors. I've been doing healthcare for over 15 years and on some big IPD projects. Looking forward to our discussion.
Excellent. Good to have you here, Michael. Sounds like you've got a really diverse point of view there with seeing kind of both sides, right? So last but certainly not least, let's go to Terry. And if anybody in the chat or in the comments can just confirm that you can hear Terry okay, please let us know. So Terry, let us know about yourself, your role, what you're working on, and all that good stuff.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the invite, by the way. My name's Terry Wong. I'm a project executive here at XL Construction. Like actually both the other Michaels here have a history of growing up in operations and also in pre-construction, so held both hats, and now in a executive role here, primarily focused on healthcare for the last 17 years. I am very fortunate to have been a part of mostly collaborative style delivery models, design assist, design build, and in the IFOA as well, an integrated form of agreement, and really enjoy being able to be part of a larger project team where the mission is really about the project and not necessarily the you versus I kind of attitude. So really looking forward to the conversation.
All right, great to have you here. And we got a thumbs up. Yes, we can hear you. Perfect. Excellent. So thank you all for introducing yourselves, your background. There's a ton of experience here. For again, those of you who are joining in, trickling into the discussion. Please note, like you can use your comment or chat box to ask us questions, leave some of the thoughts that you're having at any point throughout the conversation. We will see them. We do want to engage with you. So please, please, please do use that comment or chat box to share any thoughts you might have. So this is an expert lineup. It's really rare to get some, direct access to this type of expertise in the industry. So we do want to hear from you. All right, so let's get into it. And what I'll kick off with our discussion today. A lot of us in the industry are familiar with LCI. That's lean. Oh, geez, I will have you guys explain it because I'm going to butcher it probably. So for the team that attended LCI Congress last week, please tell us a little bit about that. Who attended? What were your key takeaways? So I'll jump off with that for the group.
Yeah, and I think both myself and Jason, we saw each other at LCI. It was actually a Congress in Arlington. It stands for Lean Congress Institute. In Arlington, Texas, last year. Had to find that on a map, being a California girl. But I liken it to honestly a high school reunion that you want to be at. It is a great community of people and friends and just professional individuals that, have just seen and been through projects together for many, many years. So it's really connecting with really what current state is and really revisiting kind of where people have been in the last, like for me, 17 years of my career. Finding people that I haven't seen in 15 years and still very much an active part of the space. I think that one thing that was very noticeable for the group here is that it was very healthcare rich. There were a lot of healthcare clients there specifically, and a lot of trade partners and designers who made a presence with their healthcare group specifically. So, in terms of even the presentation material, I saw a lot of healthcare relevant projects or people who work in that space. And my biggest takeaway was that this community is thriving, is healthy, and it's hungry to learn and evolve, right? So there are a lot of things about lean that you can read in books, etc. But seeing it in action and people being able to share their stories, their successes, and sometimes the hard work that gets to getting into a highly operating team is always pretty refreshing, even though like Jason knows this about me, but like conferences are very draining, but being in a community where you want to be in is really, really exciting and refreshing. So that
Yeah.
was my
Yeah,
takeaway.
the high school reunion you want to go to, like,
Yeah.
wow, that's powerful. Jason, go ahead. Like, let us know some of your thoughts as
Yeah,
well.
LCI was great. I find it, it just meeting everyone is really great. I find it's a great place to kind of drink the Kool-Aid and remind yourself that people are doing a lot of great things out there, especially with the novel project delivery. To your point, there was a lot of healthcare. I think there was like 30 people from UCSF and a lot of people from Sutter, a lot of owners. Most of the general contractors that go to the LCI they're already pretty progressive because they're adopting, they're learning about that. So that was neat. One of the things that was interesting was the keynote speaker was Chris Voss, who was an ex-FBI negotiator. He talked about something called tactical empathy, and
Ooh.
I,
That's the
I,
buzzword.
I
Yeah,
think
tell
that
us
was a
more.
really interesting concept that lends itself to kind of collaboration. Sometimes folks are thinking collaboration is all about just getting along. And so, or teamwork's all about getting along. And there is a component to that, but it's also having the ability to have it healthy, at times tension, but really being able to tell the truth and speak about the elephant in the room. And so that kind of talks more about this
Mm,
tactical empathy where you're really having to understand the other person's outcomes and business
yes.
cases, not just empathize, but you have to understand it enough to actually affect your own side. So I felt that was it just came out. So that was powerful.
All right. I see like so many nodding heads like, yeah, this empathy thing is a really big deal. The tactical empathy. So let's dig into that more. I think that's a really good segue too into collaboration, right? So I mean, with that in mind, this tactical empathy, we're bringing together a lot of different stakeholders. We've been working together over years and years and years. We kind of throw out the concept of collaboration kind of all the time, right? It's a little bit of a buzzword. Before we get into it, though, like, what does that mean to you? And I just want to hear maybe let's maybe pare it down to just a couple words or maybe one brief sentence of what collaboration means. And then I'll call on. Let's go around. So let's start with Michael Barden. What does
Hmm.
collaboration mean to you, very briefly?
Well, depending on how the conversation would have gone, I might have chosen different answers, but I'm going to build on the tactical empathy. So I
Okay.
think it comes out of a recognition that the way our business is organized is around specialization. So all the different entities, whether it's architects, builders, trade partners, we've all evolved toward having a specific role, and those roles are clearly defined and there are borders between the roles. But the problem is that many of our problems fall between those two borders, right, of
Mm,
any given role in this gray area. And to step out and beyond that role is to take a risk. And of course, our training, our incentive structures within all of our companies push us away from risk, but the project problems require well, they don't require because for years, right, we've been addressing problems without stepping into that gap between
yeah.
roles, but we're trying
Silos.
to push ourselves toward it. So this empathy question is really a professional empathy question. Any personnel
100%.
can transcend these barriers, but to really understand what drives another company and how to understand their position contractually within the project, and then being willing to take a risk in order to solve
Right.
the problem. That's
Take
the essence, I think, of
taking a
collaboration.
risk to solve a problem. Love that. So, on the definition or like what it means to you as well, I want to hear from the rest of the group too. So, let's go to Terry. You kind of jumped in there. A couple words or one sentence. What does collaboration mean to you? So,
Yeah, yeah, I really love what you said, Michael, right? And that really is hitting to kind of foundationally what a lot of the barriers are to effective collaboration. Because to Aaron's point, it can be a buzzword. It's not putting people in a room and then shaking it and then thinking that that's the best problem, like the best solution. But for me, given that I've been in healthcare and this is mostly a healthcare centric space, it does come down to beyond like bridging on what you said, Michael, an alignment on what kind of the mission of the project is, right? And I find that very powerful because we work in a healthcare space, right?
mm,
At the end of the day, we are working for clients that are providing medical services to our community. And being able to have that early alignment with the team and then doing the work towards this collaboration, whether it's a specific contract structure, whether it's co-location, whether it's alignment sessions in the beginning, a lot of that foundational work is incredibly important and actually really hard to do, right? Coming from our corners of the world where we're built up to be successful in a certain way, whether it's incentivized through, fee or, we're already just thinking about just like revenue and backlog. Like we are trained to be business people like that in that way too. But, it's stopping to thinking like, what is this project supposed to serve at the end of the day, right? And breaking down those silos so that you can have that, I love the word tactical empathy, but it is stressing upon like an understanding of where somebody else is coming from, and then being able to take that risk and that conversation to get the best outcome, not the cheapest outcome, not the fastest outcome, but the best outcome to provide the highest value to the project's purpose, right? And the provider's purpose. So
This is really great. So we're building here. We have taking a risk, working through the gaps in our roles, alignment on mission. So that's what I took from your words there, Terry. There's definitely a lot more in there. Let's go next to Michael Blassingim. Curious to see any additional thoughts on collaboration and what that means.
Yeah, I think it's just empowering each group member to bring their strengths to meet a common goal.
Hmm.
And not to pile on what everyone else is saying, it's not as easy as just everyone getting in a room. You
mhm.
have to set the stage up front, and we've had a lot of success doing that. But it's really, to me, no matter what your title or level of experience, it's everyone brings their strength to get to the common goal.
Fantastic. Um, Yeah, bringing our strengths in. Yeah, that's something that we kind of touched on earlier. And then rounding us out, Jason, like let us know any additional thoughts you have, and maybe also jump into like what are some barriers to effectively
Yeah, for
accomplishing
sure.
all of these things that we've defined as
For
collaboration,
sure.
which it's a lot.
Yeah. I think everyone here has just gave a lot of good points. I won't pile on there. So I think I could probably help define it maybe more by talking about some of the barriers. You
Mm,
know, some of the barriers, quite frankly, is traditional project delivery works. It pays the bills, and it's safer. All of the contracts, all the supply chains, everything's built up that way. And so it becomes one of those things where it kind of defaults because of just it's really very lawyer based, and figuring out the
mm,
silos and boundaries. I would say other barriers are there's a perception, and I'm curious what the team here is. The perception of collaboration slows things down. Now you have stakeholders. You gotta listen to a bunch of different people, and oh my gosh, now we got herding cats, and oh my gosh, how do you manage this, all this information? And so there's a perception that it actually can be slower, perception that costs more. You got to get more people up front earlier on. And there's a real worry that you have the inmates run the running that place, right? So wait, they're going to take over. The trades are going to push what they want, and the GCs are going to push what their agenda is. They're going to miss the design intent. I mean, Michael, you could kind of maybe talk ghosts. I'm ghosting, but these are
mhm.
designers and owners that are going to lose control of the project, right? And it's going to end up. So there's this real fear of, and because there's been a lot of cases traditionally where it does go that way, you end up getting changed ordered into a very different project, over VE'd, where there's no semblance to what it was originally the vision of the designer, and now you're just left with a very overexpensive project that doesn't even meet the design goals. And so, um, yeah, and I think one of the ways to get over that is it takes a couple of people that have gone through it on a collaborative project to kind of, this is like drink the Kool-Aid and see the value of that. And this is why going to these conferences that have,
Yeah.
DBIA or LCI, it reinvigorates you, because you really need a couple of disciples that have said, I've been through it. I mean, Michael, you probably travel all over, and you meet people that, do traditional, and they're like, what, you want me to just have the leap of faith that this is going to be better?
Mm.
And so I'd love to hear about folks here. How do you get owners to get that leap of faith? How do we, or general contractors, or even designers? The designers like, you know what, I want to just do traditional.
Such a good question. Maybe let's jump to Michael Blassingim, if I can put you on the spot a little. I see a lot of head nods. Like, yeah. Any thoughts on that question from Jason? Like, how do we get people to believe in this approach and that collaboration's worth the time and the effort?
Well, it's funny. Over the past year,
Mhm.
more than a handful of times, we've had different owner groups want to hear about it. They're hearing about an IPD type delivery, and they're wanting more. They're hearing benefits. So what we're finding more is people are believing in it. Now, I'm not, they're hearing the great parts of it, but they just really don't understand it, and they want somebody to explain to them in
Hmm,
layman terms, the benefits, the
interesting.
pros, the cons of it, and really just to educate themselves on it. And then they can start stepping in slowly to it. But I can't tell you how much interest our different owners who have a different way of delivering their projects are now getting interested, and again, it's they're warming up. They're slowly taking it on in bits and pieces right now. So normally, to be honest, I'm not having to sell it as much as explain it, the pros and
I
cons,
see.
to it, because you think, oh, I can just do this and throw everybody in a room, and I'm going to get this great project on schedule with the, with the the best materials, and it's not that easy. It takes some work, and how you set it up, and the team members, and who's on board. So really, it's just a lot of just education to the owners, about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think for like how I'm seeing it, very optimistic, right? We get good feelings about this approach, so we know intrinsically, yeah, this is a good thing, but maybe we just need to be a little bit better on the quantitative data and the pure information that we're sharing about the results of it. So yeah, it's that information capture piece and like communicating it in a way that's easy for others to understand. So fantastic. So I do want to, talk a little bit about as well, collaboration. We throw it out as a buzzword, but it's really important. As we've discussed, it is also, something that's needed to be done like earlier on, much earlier on, which we've touched on um, briefly here. But maybe could somebody expand on the benefit of doing this type of approach, way, 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 in the beginning of the project before we even, start hitting the field, right? And maybe I'll jump that to Michael Barden to take on. And looks like we may have had the other Michael drop off. We'll probably get
Mhm.
him back on in just a second. But
Yep.
Michael Barden, if you could maybe talk about benefits of early collaboration in design.
Um, I guess so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I can get there, but I think I'm gonna get there from a little bit starting to build on some of the previous chat,
Yeah,
and I was
absolutely.
going to observe that one of the important ingredients. So we've talked about on how do you convince people to do this? How do you get over the fear? It reminds me of that old expression about democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. So how do you what's there's a you can get a lot done if you collaborate. Boy, look at your problems when you collaborate. They're going to be a hell of a lot worse if you don't, right? So how do you get people to buy into that? And I think one of the important concepts when I was thinking through what we were going to talk about, I think fairness is something
Mm,
that we don't talk about enough in collaborative design and selling collaborative delivery, right? Because where do people start out with years and years of experience living generally within the boundaries of an older project delivery model, where at the very least they know at the end of the day they're going to get what's coming to them, right? They've got a contract, they're going to meet it, they're going to get rewarded for that. What you're asking people to do when you take a risk is accept that the outcomes won't hurt them. And so it's really
That's right.
important. I think Michael Blasingham was talking about, it's important how you set this up, of course, and that means a lot of different things. But I think one of the important things we don't talk about is how fair is the process to all parties? And can you set up a process where everyone's taking a certain amount of risk and the result isn't always that partner X gets stuck with
mhm.
owning the solution, right? If that's happening every time, you're not in a collaborative environment. A collaborative environment is when you identify the problem and you divvy up responsibility in a way that everyone can rely on the fairness of the process and the justice of kind of what you decide as a group. Oh, because ultimately, in any problem, someone has to take an action to help fix it. It might be multiple people, and that's what they're worried about, getting saddled with assignments that don't belong to them. And so I think it's really important think about fairness. And if you can do that and convince people that the process will be fair and faster, and how can you say no?
Yeah.
I want to jump
Fair
in
and
here.
faster. pause that just for a second, Jason. So I see we have Michael Blassingen back on. Good to almost see you, Michael. We'll hang on to maybe see your video pop in. Take your time. And then I also wanted to just remind the group and our audience, I see some of you popping in and out. So for anybody who's new, we're almost at our halfway mark. So you can ask questions and comments and leave comments for our group. We do have one here from Anchor, which is it's a stimulating discussion. Absolutely. Let us know if you have any additional comments to add or share on these topics. We do want to hear from you. So thank you for that.
I want to jump in and follow up.
Yeah, jump right in, Jason. Just wanted to make that.
Kind of string some of these themes together, and I'm going to go maybe do some specifics here. Michael with Leighton was saying that owners are starting to take notice and they're kind of easing into it, tiptoeing into it, and that's a great way to do it. Start small. In fact, I started small with Michael Barden about 10, 12 years ago on Genentech's first foray into target value delivery. We built a wellness center together, and it was very challenging because the lot of folks on both sides, all three, owner, designer, and GC side, were familiar with traditional, and there was this gravitational pull to move us back constantly. But I can remember a specific time where Michael and I were around the table, and the problem was the owner couldn't understand the estimate the way that the designer couldn't understand the estimate the way it was broken up, and I couldn't understand the challenges of the programmatic space. And really, what the solution there was, we need to basically build out the estimate both in CSI and well as functional format. So we had to break it up to say this is the this is a wellness center. So there was the different spaces, the lobby, the out of house, the exterior skin, and Michael was key to translating that. And it took more work, but what I'm talking about here is this is the tactical empathy. I had to understand what Michael needed to be able to articulate value props to the owner, and he needed the cost data, but it wasn't in the right way. So I actually had to translate it down at the granular level, and it meant a lot more work for myself and my team. But the net result was we actually got quicker decisions, and he could actually wave the flag and help drive better discussions and stuff. And I remember, you probably remember that late at night trying to go through the estimate. It went from 300 line items to like 900, but that was the granularity and the ability to actually talk and to translate, right, the vision to the owner, and then back to the GC who's going to build it.
Which was a risk for both of us, and I'll just say, I mean, the one way to think about that is, yes, there was more labor. There was more labor for both sides, and there was the perception of risk for both sides. What is the designer doing? Kind of getting so involved in the estimate, but that led to a faster outcome, honestly, and that's kind of the essential headline of the story.
And builds that trust with the whole team. Right. Yeah, getting back to what you were saying earlier, Michael Barden. Fantastic. And we do have Michael Blassingen back. Awesome.
Yay.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm back.
There's always something. But yeah, knew we'd get you back eventually. So fantastic. All right. So I guess really briefly, lots of acronyms. I know, Jason, you threw out target value delivery. Really quick, does anybody from the group, and feel free anybody to pick it up, what exactly is that? And I guess what's your favorite, part of using that in your approach to project delivery?
I could take a quick stab at it, and I'd love to have other folks add color, but I think of it as simply as often design. It goes design then cost, and what we try to do is flip it where the cost informs the design. Right? And it really could be any constraint. I've been on projects where schedule informs design. Data centers, a lot of times it's cost, but it's more schedule driven, pro forma driven. So you could really use any constraint. I haven't been on a project where quality informs the design, where cost and schedule don't matter. I would love to do that sometime. But often it's cost and schedule. And so you then separate the project into functional groups that make sense for any one of the projects. And that, one of the things that I did recently, often it's an exterior skin cluster, interiors, structural elements, MEP, maybe a different key functional group. I have had the opportunity to actually work on projects where we actually use owner equipment and owner commissioning and process automation. And we add that into where it's not the traditional construction cost, but it's really a true overall project cost. And there's a lot of movement of cost between those different buckets. And so what you're trying to do is break down the silos between those function groups, because there's a lot of give and take, especially on these more large, complicated projects. Well, if I affect the rotation of the building, I'm going to actually change the heat load, which is going to increase the MEP. If I rotate the other way or I change the actual fenestration, I'm going to lower my HVAC. I mean, it's so integrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
let's
so,
talk about healthcare, medical
yeah,
equipment, people in the
yeah,
people in healthcare. That medical equipment budget is always very surprising, isn't it, when it comes in? How much that costs. So yes, and to leap on Jason's point, we're all nodding, but the typical structure is empowering these cluster groups, usually by technical expertise, right? To empower them to have decision making around the design and the quality and the schedule that impacts that cluster group, and measure it against the budget that was provided for them. So they're managing their own risk and capitalizing on the opportunities during every phase of the job to ensure that they're maintaining not only their budget, and then obviously talking to the other groups, because it's always about
Mhm.
collaboration between technical clusters, and ultimately how that impacts and tracks towards the original target budget. So it really is just breaking it down into those technical clusters, like Jason said, to encourage and facilitate and empower these groups to make an impact and track against that budget throughout the job. And this is through the course of construction, not just through design, right? So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really rich in just the content and depth that you guys are getting into. Since we are just past halfway in our time together today, just a reminder again to our audience, you can ask questions, or if there's anything that you want to dig into a little bit more with our group, this is the perfect opportunity to have some easy access to their experience. And then what I want to do as well, Terry, just to kind of expand and maybe to kind of shift gears a little bit, and go a little bit more into the healthcare specifics and those clients. We know that healthcare projects are rather complicated, right? They're not cookie cutter. There's a ton of things that have to be considered to make them successful, and they also tend to be really sophisticated clients as well. So, in your experience, what's a really solid approach, surefire way to give those owners, um, what they need in terms of experience with the project delivery and earn and build that trust?
yeah, I think there's a trap in that question, because there's never a surefire or
Yeah,
one way to deliver it, right? Every project is very unique. The stakeholders are very different. The program is very different. Just the elements of the market and the industry are different, right? As you're walking into the project, say it's just fresh out of the box, right? And we're in our big room for the first time. I think there's a few foundational things. Develop a really highly operating collaborative team is bringing the right partners on board early. And I'm expanding that to the consultant group, the end user group, the trade partners, right? Because they really do have a big stake in what impacts the job. And this is very early on. This is the opportunity to think. This is the opportunity to find the best options, multiple options to present, right? So I think that first is bringing on the technical partners with the right experience and actually the right mindset. I was speaking in another panel a while back, and something that resonated with a lot of people is the people you want early on are the
mhm,
people that say yes if, yes but, yes and, right?
hmm,
Is very a solution minded type of individual with the technical expertise bringing in, whether that's the electrician who's like, oh, guess what? PG&E is a big struggle, right? With us in California, and just getting power, to the
it
to the site on time, right? So bringing those partners in that like have the technical expertise, relevant expertise, but the right mindset to help being more like solution focused, right? So I think at the foundation of it, that's really kind of where what my advice would be. And in order to build that trust, like we were just kind of joking earlier about it being a
mhm,
high school reunion and
yeah,
healthcare being small. But you know those partners in the industry that you would be like, hey, I have a problem. I don't know the solution, but someone that you can trust and bring to the table to be like, let's solve this together without even like a contract in place, without even a project in mind, right? It's just those types of people that, you know, over the years that have that right partnership. And you know, I like the word tactical empathy, but just like, hey, nothing in mind, but this is a long-term relationship. This is a long-term partnership. We're all in it together, right? And it's a matter of bringing those people into the table when, you know, we have time. It's like go slow to go fast kind of situation. Once we have a direction, we can establish the foundation, and people have the right attitude. Then it's about a much cleaner, in my opinion,
Hmm.
execution, right? So you know, that's my feedback to it. But I do think the mistake is like, you know, and I make this mistake too, right? Just like
Yeah.
coming into the job, like, oh yeah, I just did this. Let's just do it again, right? And there's new players at the table. There's you know, potentially a new CEO for this, you know, hospital, right? Like there's just
Right.
like
Right.
take the time to listen with open ears, right? You know, I
Yeah.
love what we do. We're always learning. We're always meeting new people who bring like the most wonderful ideas, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
that's my
one of the
feedback.
things that you're touching on, like it, I love, but also it drives me crazy in this industry is that everything changes all the time.
All the
So
time.
there's always new lessons to be learned, but the key part that I think you're driving at is that people first, culture first. If we're, you know, problem solving and oriented towards having that open mindset and being, you know, excited about future capabilities that we can do together, it goes a really long way. So that was my little takeaway from that. So thanks for sharing that, Terry. Any other thoughts,
I was going to say,
Jason?
Terry, you're talking about bringing trade partners in or other folks in early, and there's also a lot of reluctance to do that because it's like, oh man, I'm going to lock in with a certain trade partner. It's
Mm,
going to cost
yeah.
more, or even a certain
Yeah.
fee. Like, oh, now I can have the options. It's this old mindset. I got to get the best value is when I can have a complete set of documents, like a hard bid. I'd like to have Michael, Les, and Jim talk about how he got almost 80% of the trades on board in conceptual phase. I mean, and really talk maybe to the detail of tactically of how did you get the owner to buy in on that, and not be like nervous with, well, are we locking in too early?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're pushing that earlier and earlier and earlier into the project. You know, the one of the projects you're speaking about there, it was not an owner who was used to bringing on subs that early. We went and getting some specifics to them. You know, before when we went to discuss it with them, we showed them a competitive RFP that we could issue, and so they're not losing that competitive function. Um, we also, when we received the RFP responses back from our subcontractors, our major trades, again, this was $1 billion job. So the subs answered the RFPs just like a contractor would, it was set up that way. We also involved them in the interviews, in the scoring. It was all transparent. And then I guess the last kicker on it, they were like, well, what happens if their costs start going up? We're putting a lot of trust in them. But one of the things we did when we wrote in their contract to the sub, just to be blunt, is we said, if your cost stays the same or goes down through this pre-construction, based on what the design is doing, you'll do the construction. But if you start playing games and your number starts going up, um, we reserve the right to rebid it. And again, the owner was a little bit reluctant at the beginning, but once he saw the level of transparency that they were involved in the scoring, set in the interviews, the architects and engineers associated with that trade set in and they scored them too. It was actually a fabulous process, and then coming out of that, you mentioned 80% of the job on a conceptual. We all know that hospitals and funding mechanisms now are getting harder and harder. But going into, coming out of conceptual, we had 80% of the job in essence locked down. And then at DD, we'd locked down another 12%. So we were actually able to go get funding and put the owners
That's right.
at ease for them to release funds for us to get going, on our early release packages at DD level. So it's sort of that cost certainty, fed through the whole project. And we got an early release on funding, early start for them. Of course, then that means, they get in their facility sooner. So, but just that transparency, and you can still keep it competitive. That you don't lose that if it's done right.
And Michael Blazingham, I'm guessing that it wasn't just a stick, there's probably also a carrot for these trade partners as well. I mean, the stick being the rebid, and you don't have to tell us the business terms, but I've got to believe there's a carrot out there for them as well.
Yeah, we've done incentives before. Some we do, some we don't. We're all familiar in healthcare. I like to think we get the best, and we don't chase one job with an owner. We chase jobs for them for years and years and years. So, to be honest, our biggest reward is when they call us to come do the next one.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do some incentives on it, but we try not to let that be the driving factor. That's sort of the icing on the cake if there is some incentives there, for us and our trade partners. But just getting that repeat work is really what a lot of our healthcare subcontractors are about.
I'd say the other, you say incentive, Michael. It's a good question. The carrot and the stick. The other carrot to at least the trade partners, and I guess to a lesser extent GCs, but often trade partners is they got to buy the job with a lot of unknowns in place, and that's risky, right? They could lose a lot of money if they have to sign up early, or even not so early with the drawings incomplete. You reverse that and have them come to the table, and they're part of the whole onboarding process, and they actually affect and input the design, either details that are more efficient from how to build. It's works with their prefab systems, whatnot. They're stripping risk out. So the other incentive is they're onboarded early. They've locked in a scope of work for a certain number of years. They can set it in their books, but it's a less risky job.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Our drywallers are giving the architects the details to use for head of wall.
100%.
Yeah, our curtain wall system is saying, hey, don't even
use those clips.
Ring damage trying to draw head of wall details. Here's the window system we're going to use. Just stick that in the drawings. So it's shedding risk. Yep, cost certainty.
Yeah, we've all got our bobbleheads going.
Yeah. Well, the most fun in these collaboration spaces is having the detailers, the BIM folks, and the superintendents and the foremen during conceptual design. That is such a pleasure, and really where that gives me life. How can we build this, bigger, better, faster, and ultimately, right? Then it's about, hey, I really do feel like we're giving the client really the best value, right, for the project. So.
I want to double down on that. I'm sorry, Michael.
Well, well, you're going to double down, and then I'm going to challenge us with something. So why don't you double down first?
Okay, let's see if I let them be both wrong or both right.
Take it away.
I was just going to say that is the joy of. Most of us come into this industry because we like to solve problems. And the problems we don't want to solve is arguing about cost or schedule. We want to actually solve technical problems. That's what most folks come to this industry for. And so when you're actually shoulder to shoulder with the trades and the designers coming up with, and Michael, to your point, it's all about the transition. I could think about it's not the glass that's going to leak, it's where the glass hits the mullion, which then gets the caulking down to the actual, where it goes into the steel structure, right? It's those are what you need to talk about, but you can't talk about it at a level detailed enough if the trade partners or the designers aren't in the same room. What happens is that happens at RFI. A year later, you're sorting that out. But so it does put the joy back into the construction in these collaborative approaches. So that's what I was going to double down for.
Yeah.
Michael?
Burden? Yeah. And the challenge I would remind us of is that it's one thing to put people side by side in the same room. It's another thing to get them to work together. So there's a dimension of this, which is, right, there are big forces in the industry, particularly in California, which are pushing us towards these models of delivery. The interest is on the owner sides. There's money to be saved. There's value to be recouped. But you also want to have a situation where people actually do collaborate. You don't just drive down the cost, but you get people coming out the other side with positive experience. They've actually solved problems together. So there's a dimension of this, which is kind of lumping everyone together in the room. Great. I think there's also a dimension of how do you get people to actually do that work productively. It's easier earlier. You could say, you're missing something. Great. That's an easy observation. It's much harder once people are further along the process. They've much more dug in, right? There's much more product on the table. There's much more investment in time and resources in what we're talking about, and so then you have a problem and someone has to change something. So there's a dynamic that changes over time. And I think the observation I was going to make is the role owners can take here is by setting expectation for their team that they are going to work collaboratively. And that in turn requires new habits, and new tools. We haven't talked much about new tools. Jason, I think you touched a little bit. I think what's still unclear, at least to me, is are there tools in the industry? There are TVD tools, right? I mean, we've talked about those. I mean, uh, Jason represents a company that makes a great TVD tool. Are there tools that help with other kinds of collaboration? Because not every collaborative problem is a cost problem. And I'm not seeing those in the industry. I think people are making those up as they go, which is the way it's going to be and the way it has to be. But I think there's an interesting conversation around how do you create, is there an opportunity to create tools that um, that that solve problems and assign responsibility with that fairness and transparency that build trust that we were talking about before? I think that's a big opportunity in the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I don't know how many mural boards, CBAs, A3s, like all these things I've created. I'm just like,
Yeah.
can someone just do this in like on a
Right.
web-based browser? Just because I think that, like, to Jason's point, all of us want to throw our technical, like, our technical knowledge on it and get it. But so I'm sorry, I know that your mic, Michael, is a little bit soft, but I think you were trying to chime in as well.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best thing we're using right now, literally we're, besides our scheduling software, we're
Right.
using on our major projects is Join and Smart Sheets, and we've taken Smart Sheets and catered it to what we're doing. I mean, we're
Yeah.
tracking commitments. I love it. I get an email, saying, "Hey, you've got a commitment due, in 3 weeks," and I get another one 3 days before, another one the day of. We track commitments. We graph commitments. We see if we have high performing teams based on how they're meeting their commitments. So, really, Layton's had the opportunity to really cater Smart Sheets to what we're doing, and then Join with those two pieces of software, and we just feel like we can tackle the world right now. Again,
All
it,
right.
Are you doing PPC during the design phase then, and outputting that out of smart sheets? You plan
do,
percent complete. Are you tracking plan percent complete in your smart sheets?
no,
Basically tracking commitment percentages,
we're tracking commitment.
or
Yeah, we're tracking
okay,
commitment.
but not like
We're actually pool planning not only the
yeah,
construction, we pool plan the pre-construction
Mhm.
Yeah.
and
right.
different softwares for that, whether it's Touch Plan or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But our scheduling software for the pool planning, and then Smart Sheets and Join. And man, I feel like I can tackle the world. You give me those
Yeah.
Yeah,
three.
the pool planning for design, that's really what I think the past 10 years, that was the big aha moment for me is
Yeah.
really pool
Transformed.
planning from key package points, when construction needs to be released to when the actual design's ready, through the increments to then the decisions, and really that cascade. And it all hinges off of when you want to actually open up the doors at the end of the project, right? But it's a pool plan all the way through. Um, and so, yeah, with pool plan, you could do the metrics like plan percent complete and these other KPIs that pop out of V Planner
Mhm.
and Touch Plan. But I was curious if you were actually pulling that data out and tracking those KPIs in your smart sheets. But bottom line, I'm kind of getting in the weeds. Bottom line, it's pool plan through the design. That's what really, I think that's really what,
That's
and how
brilliant.
to, I mean, I'm curious. You guys have much more design management experience than I have here. But to me, it's which decisions need to be made when. It's this
100%.
waterfall of like, how do you choreograph that? I
Yeah.
mean, does
Yeah.
that resonate as a big barrier or challenge or?
Sometimes, yeah, for sure. Especially as H guy and Oshpod, right? There are a lot of technical things we need to get through. I
Right.
primarily work with, Sutter, which is very pro V planner, right? So
Okay,
that's one thing that's out there that helps manages kind of the last planner system through a design phase and has things available to help with the PPC like week by
okay.
week. So that's one. But there are other
Oh,
available softwares out there that do a flavor of that, but that's something that I know that with the particular client I work with the most that they like to leverage during our
So
process.
I'll jump in here. Wow, we might need to have a part two because this is really, really good. So tech stack and all the solutions, we could for sure spend like a whole nother hour on, and I would love to, but we are getting close to time. So just making sure that we have enough time here. I do want to let our audience know we're in our last 10 minutes or so. So get any questions in. Lot of really good content here. And then to start maybe wrapping up the discussion, I do want to ask each of you. So if you could share your thoughts, like what is the future of pre-construction in light of, technology and all the new capabilities, especially with AI that's coming out? And then if anybody wants to reach out to you and follow up somehow, where can they connect? Which also to our audience, we will be able to see all your comments on LinkedIn, so we can follow up with you if you comment or chat us on LinkedIn. So yeah, thoughts on future of pre-construction in light of tech and AI, and contact follow up. So I'll call on you and kind of go around my screen here. So let's start off with Michael Barden.
Mm. Um, I think that I want us to get back to fundamentals. Actually, that's where I would wrap. Where the roughly speaking, even the DBIA contracts follow the pattern set by the old AIA model contracts for roles. So the designer's responsible for intent, they're responsible for documenting it, but the level of detail is not defined. And the builder is responsible for the work, so they have to fill in all that detail. So until we start to, and I was going to say, sorry, the DBA contract doesn't really modify that. It engages the designer to coordinate, the lead designer to coordinate with all the partners. But fundamentally, the roles remain the same. And fundamentally, as long as we have siloed roles, the dynamic that we're trying to overcome is going to remain. And so I'd like to see, I think we'd all like to see us come up as an industry, invent some new solutions to this. And I'm not going to propose that I have one at this moment in the next minute or two, but I think until we tackle that as an industry,
Yeah.
we're going to be on this slippery slope. We're not going to hit the top. We're not going to reach the top. I'm not sure what it looks like at the top, but that's what we need to be thinking about.
And then if anybody has any follow-up questions for you, where can they reach you? Which LinkedIn, we will be able to see the comments. So
LinkedIn would be the best place. Yep.
perfect. All right. Thanks, Michael Burden, for sharing that. Let's go on to Michael Blassingim. So same thing, like thoughts on future of pre-construction in light of all the tech stuff that's going on, and where can people find you?
Yeah. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn. What I'm seeing on the projects I'm involved with is our owners are expecting more. They're expecting us to not, show up with these big surprises at major milestones. They're
Mm-hmm.
expecting us to hit our schedules, design and construction. And I think they're making us get smarter and making us think it through and really bring more to the table than the bad juju that when, oh, you're a contractor, you're going to surprise me with this or do that or do this. We've got to get that. We've got to work smarter, and I think we're all heading in that direction with real-time estimating, with target value design, with the collaboration with us and the designers and engineers and our trade partners. So I just think with the stress on the market, it's making us all get better. And if you don't get better, you're going to get left behind. So,
Yeah.
All right, we're seeing like a raising of the bar with our
yes.
capabilities, 100%. All right, thanks for sharing that. Let's go next to Terry. So same thing, yeah.
Yeah,
Sharing.
I'm not going to answer the AI question because the story is left to still being written on kind of what it is,
Yeah,
right? But I love the opportunity for, efficiency anywhere. But the story is kind of left to be unwritten. So the question earlier about there's a bit of a gap right now in this technology space for pre-con specifically. So and leveraging basically what both Michaels have said, I actually think pre-con, profession, the pre-con and estimating profession, if it is going on the trend of more collaboration, more FOA, bringing people on early, there's going to be a big demand, and that job is going to be a little bit different, and it's going to require technical experience and then also data driven and the ability to innovate, right, in that space, in a, really that design space. That is a tall order, for someone. So I'm anxious to see kind of like what the next generation looks like, how
Yeah.
companies are going to build towards these professionals. Even both Michael's and myself have had different lives, right? Ops, pre-con, design, CA, like, so it does take a little bit of a different mindset on what that profession is going to look like, the people that join that industry. And that specific vein, you think of our construction industry, it's people think about the builders. Like, I'm thinking, putting my GC hat on, they think about the builders. That
Yes.
is 80-90% of our workforce, right? In our companies. And you think about that estimating and pre-con, like, what is that going to look like? Given that there's such a demand and a pull for that technical expertise.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great insight on the focus on talent because, I feel like even a few years ago too, like my type of role of being specifically in technology and innovation for construction didn't really exist. And these things evolve as our world and our approach evolves. So really like that focus on people. And then Terry, if anybody's curious to reach out or has questions,
LinkedIn or through Jason Brenner. No, I'm kidding.
Perfect. No, great segue. So, Jason, I'd love to have you wrap us up. Thoughts on the future of pre-construction, and in the light of tech, all these exciting things happening. And then, if anyone has questions for you, as well as join, where can they reach you?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Yeah, so I think two thoughts here. One, there is a lot of just tactical. There's really point solution fatigue in the industry. There's just too many individual
Mhm.
solutions. I remember struggling when I was more in the trenches, having to log into probably 15 different logins, passwords, and transferring information. You do 10% here, and then you repeat 5 of that 10% over here, and you transfer it, and then you and to manage a project, and this is both even on the owner side as well. But to manage a project, it's fatiguing. So I
Mhm.
think there's a real opportunity to stitch together and a lot more integration. I mean, that's what I'm constantly hearing from others, but I also know from my personally being in the trenches, having something that is stitched together and transfers information seamlessly from one to the next, and you're not transferring information. So that's at a tactical level. But at a more strategic level, I absolutely agree with Michael Barden. Is that it's like, I'll give an example. For the in the '80s, we had emissions with vehicles because there's all carbureted engine. And so we kept putting on other bolt-on solutions to try to reduce the emissions. And it wasn't until we actually said, well, we got to think about this, and go to injection. But really, the true pivot is we got to just go to non-gasoline. We just got to go EV. And so the EV next is to actually rethink how we do design construction. There's some orgs out there, Design Construction Exchange Group or .org. And I could put the link in the later, but they're starting to think about different ways of moving away from AI industry to really structure, like, what are the packages of work we need to support construction, not what do we need to reach a deliverable defined by AI. And so I think
Right.
that's where you're going to start to get this, where both groups, builders and designers, come together and kind of redraw the landscape. And I know that's more design management side, but I see that will directly affect the outcome of pre-construction and thus construction.
Okay. And then, so
Oh,
robust discussion. Where can people find you if they have
LinkedIn's the best place.
LinkedIn?
DM me through that. Yep.
Fantastic. So, some last reminders here in the last minute, very last chance to ask a live question. So, we'll be here for another minute or so. You can also still add some comments and questions on the LinkedIn event page or the YouTube page. So, it will be recorded and posted there, especially for those who may be returning or tuning in at a later time. And then, of course, we want to say, thank you to all of our participants here. So, Jason, Michael, and Terry, you've taken some time out of your day to share your expertise. We absolutely appreciate it. I know there's a wealth of knowledge here and a lot of topics that we can maybe have a part two on or dive into again. So really appreciate that. And thank you as well to our audience for tuning in. I see quite a few of you kind of stuck on all the way through the end, so that's great. We appreciate you and stay tuned for another discussion shortly. So with that, thank you all. Take care and have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.